This year I've read a book every 12 days. Well, in 2023, I didn't read a single book like the stupid piece of trash that I was. So today I want to share 5 things I think have made me a more consistent reader and allow me to enjoy my time while doing so. Yeah, we're going to get controversial already. I know it's maybe slightly counterintuitive that if you don't read much now, to then suddenly say you should start reading 2 or 3 books at once is maybe quite stupid. But the reason I say it is that one of the hardest things I think when you're trying to get into reading is trying to stay energised and excited to read enough. You might find that when you start reading, you have a load of enthusiasm and excitement, and you start a new book and you're chuffed to get going. But then by about page 100, you're starting to kind of lose that enthusiasm that you had initially and you're less energised. And so by having 2 or 3 books on the go at once, you can just sort of constantly shuffle between them when you start to get bored of one. What this will do is ensure that instead of getting bored of a single book and then letting that put you off books in general, it will actually keep you focused on enjoying books as a thing rather than books as an individual book you're reading. You'll also realise that by tandem reading, you can cater for various moods you have in the day. So I know personally that I don't want to be reading the same book when I wake up versus when I'm having lunch versus when I'm trying to get to bed. They're 3 very different states of mind I'm in. And so by having a couple, maybe you can cater for the time when you're energised and focused and feeling deep and philosophical. You can start reading some philosophy of some sort. But when you're in bed and just want something really easy to kind of smash through to get you ready to go to sleep, you can go for something a little bit more light-hearted. You might not finish each book in 12 days, but by having a few on the go at once, you'll find that either they'll end at staggered times, in which case you kind of get this constant feeling of success from finishing a book, or you'll go 2 weeks without finishing a book, and then suddenly 2 or 3 will be finished at once. And so by having a few books on the go at once, I never feel like reading as a chore because I always have another book that I know I'm definitely going to enjoy. It also means that books that may be slightly longer, that you feel are kind of more of a scary commitment to get through, like Lonesome Dove. Everyone bangs on about this. I haven't actually read it yet, it's on my list. But I mean, that could kill a person. That's a ridiculous sized book. And if I was just reading this and I got 500 pages in, even if I was really enjoying it, that's like 2 weeks of being in the same world, in the same universe. Whereas if I then pair that with something smaller like Tandem Mr. Ripley, then this is something smaller and can kind of keep me reading for longer. Rather than feeling like I've kind of hit a brick wall with this at any point, which I hopefully won't, I can at least then fly onto this and kind of keep balancing the two. So that I finish this in a week, I finish this in 3 weeks, but in that 3-week period, maybe I've finished 3 books rather than just slowing down my progress on one. So I've started trying to be more deliberate with this, like having a fiction and a non-fiction at the same time, or a classic and something maybe that's more relaxed and more modern. And that certainly helped at first to feel like my brain was in completely different worlds at any one time, but I'm now starting to think that actually having a couple different books and a couple different plots on the go is working perfectly fine. Ideally, I try and sync it up so that maybe I'm reading 2 different genres or 2 different world types. Either way, by tandem reading, it feels like I never get bored by reading as a thing, because even if maybe I don't want to read one book at one time, I then know that I can just start reading some of the other book that I've got on the go, which it should be different and will keep me reading something, so I'm making some sort of progress. Pairing reading with something that you already do is called habit stacking. The point is that instead of trying to carve out special reading time, which is just bound to fail, instead you do it with something that you've already got in your daily routine, whether that's kind of a morning coffee or your daily lunch break, or before you go to bed when you normally go on your phone, switch out for 15 minutes of reading. And this is sort of the illusion of reading, because if you read for 10 minutes at breakfast and 10 minutes at your lunch break and 10 minutes on the commute home or just before you're about to go to bed, that's 30 minutes a day. If we take the average reading rate as being around 250 words per minute, then in a year you're going to get through 2,730,000 words. Just to make sure that everyone knows what 2.7 million words looks like, it's like reading not only these books in a year, but also reading these as well, and then also finding time for these books here too. And that's 30 minutes of reading a day, that's it. And with that, you can read all of these books and still have 100,000 words left over. And these are like small books I've picked out. Like, I've got War and Peace in there. I mean, you could read Don Quixote 6 times if you wanted. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that by doing 30 minutes of reading a day and habit stacking reading with your already made daily routine, this is how much reading you can do in a year without even thinking about it. We spend most of our time on our phone just because it's so convenient, especially when you've got 5 minutes because you're waiting for someone to show up and meet you, or because you're in a queue to go somewhere and you've only got a little bit of time, so you think, right, I'll just get my phone out. But by using this placement theory, you can always have a book on you and just replace using your phone with 10 minutes of reading, just to scrape through a few more pages of your book, and then that will add up when you have that on top of your 30 minutes a day as well. If you put books where you spend most of your time, then you'll also spend most of your time picking up books. So if you put a book on your coffee table or next to your bed or in your backpack if you're always going out and about, then you'll always have it on you without even having to plan to have it on you. People often talk about having friction for why they don't do things. So if you leave a book on your shelf when you need to go read, you'll always have to go into your room, go to the shelf, pull out a book. But if you've just got a couple of books scattered about the house or in your bag, as I say, then that friction is reduced to as little as possible, so that in order to start reading, it's hardly any friction at all. Having a book in your bag will also sort of change the way you view reading, because it won't be this sort of forced task that you've got to do. It will just start to become a way of spending time. No, it goes without saying, obviously you want something like this in your bag rather than something like this, but by doing something like that and having it in your bag at all times, then literally any spare minute you get, you could almost read 2 or 3 books in a year just by spare time you have throughout the day. Now, it'd be quite stupid of you to try and put something like that in your bag just to bring around, because you might as well just put a brick in there instead. But by chucking a book like this in there, then it's hard to take up any space at all. You can kind of shove it at the bottom of your bag without having to worry about it. And then, as I say, within 10 minutes of queuing, you can read through another few pages. In fact, within a day, you maybe have done a few chapters just from finding little snippets of time that you would have otherwise just gone on your phone. I blooming love Goodreads. It's a free website you can sign up to, and it really makes reading slightly more gamified, which is brilliant when you're starting out reading and you want to try and get into it more as a habit. And once you've kind of made it a habit, it's quite nice to be able to track your progress. One thing is it's great for buying books because you can see what a book is reviewed online from people who have read it, not critics, just ordinary people. So if you see a book and you want to buy it, you can quickly look it up and see what people review it as. Secondly, it's great because you can snoop around and see what your friends are reading, and either you can judge them or you can be a better friend and let them read what they want. It's a really effective tool then for feeling like you're making your way through a book, even if it feels like you're only doing a few pages at a time. And it also makes the completion of a book feel like a real achievement. First of all, yes, I know the Kindle also says what percentage you're through, but I feel like holding a book is just so much better. It also means that when you finish a book, you put it back on your bookshelf, which is maybe like somewhat of an anonymous feeling. You just kind of put it back and it feels like it's the same as when you started. But then if you also plug into Goodreads that you've finished a book, it gets moved to your read shelf, which is validating in a way that I can't even explain. And as someone that's desperate for reading validation, I feel like an absolute intellect. Despite talking about the feeling of finishing a book and uploading it onto Goodreads as being done, I do think that people often misconstrue the point of reading as finishing books. I think if you start to reframe it in your mind as reading a few pages, then you'll realise that it's a far more validating experience and that you can stay more consistent with it. I mean, if you imagine trying to run a marathon, your practice wouldn't look like doing 3 long runs the week before running. Instead, what it would be is doing a few short runs, a couple of sprints, a few interval training, and gradually working your way up in distance. Or so I think, as a very layman runner, in fact, somebody who doesn't run at all. And I think the same can be said about books, in that sometimes you will only be able to read 2 or 3 pages in a day. There'll be other days where you maybe read 3 or 4 chapters instead. And if you start to view reading in a similar light as a cumulative effect, then you'll also end up hitting those 2.7 million words. And as you're of course a loyal subscriber of the Stupid Students channel, you'd also be tandem reading. So if you read 5 pages of one book in the morning, 5 pages of another book in the afternoon, and then in a week maybe you've done a few chapters of each of them, and then within 2 weeks you've almost finished both the books, then suddenly you realise that those small amount of pages will suddenly add up very, very quickly with just 30 minutes of reading a day. Now we both know that you're hungry for a dopamine hit, and instead of viewing the task of a book as finishing it and just trying to sit down and say, right, I'm going to read 100 pages now, then you're not going to get that sweet, sweet dopamine hit. Instead, if you set the goal of reading as being, I'm going to finish the chapter today, then actually you are going to get your dopamine hit because you've set a respectable goal. And you'll have that dopamine boost that will carry on to the next day as well. This mindset is really to get you into reading. Once you've completed a few books, you'll be hooked most likely, and it won't need to be a thing of goals. You'll just kind of read for the love of the game. Before you know it, you're going to be sat in a cafe with a tote bag, sipping matcha, reading a book, and you'll be the
coolest, edgiest person around.
If you've enjoyed this video, which I hope you have, then make sure to check this one out because I reckon you'll enjoy that too.